Okay, picture this. It's Christmas Eve 1971. A passenger plane gets hit by lightning and literally disintegrates over the Amazon rainforest. And a 17-year-old girl, still strapped into her seat, falls 2 miles to the jungle floor. This is the unbelievable, true story of Juliane Koepcke, the sole survivor of Lanza Flight 508. And it all kicks off with a question that seems totally impossible to answer.
I mean, really, how? It sounds like something out of a comic book, not something that could happen in real life. How could anyone possibly walk away from an impact like that? But as you're about to see, surviving the fall, well, that was just the first miracle. The real test, the true story of survival, began the second she opened her eyes on the jungle floor.
And here's what makes this story even more gut-wrenching, and Juliane's survival that much more incredible. At least 14 other passengers also survived the initial crash. But they all died in the jungle, waiting for a rescue that just never came. Juliane, she didn't wait. And that one decision, a decision that came from her unique upbringing, made all the difference in the world.
So let's go back to that day, December 24th, 1971. High in the sky above the Amazon, a Christmas Eve flight was about to become an absolute nightmare. For the first half hour, everything was totally normal. You know, people were excited for Christmas. But then, the pilots made a really bad call to fly directly into a massive thunderstorm. The turbulence got so violent that luggage and Christmas presents started falling out of the overhead bins. Then, bam! A lightning strike hits the right wing. Within seconds, the wing just tears off, and only 15 minutes before it was supposed to land, the plane starts to break apart in midair.
Juliane was in a window seat, belted into a row of 3, and that entire row was ripped from the body of the plane, and she just began to fall. Suddenly, the roar of the engines and the screams of the passengers were gone, replaced by the terrifying sound of rushing wind. Below her, the dense, endless Amazon canopy looked, in her own words, like a field of broccoli. She blacked out somewhere during the fall.
So, the big question, right? How is it even possible to survive something like that? Well, it came down to this unbelievable combination of 3 near-impossible miracles. First, the very storm that ripped the plane apart also created these powerful updrafts that acted like a parachute, slowing her fall. Second, her whole row of seats spun like a maple seat or a helicopter rotor, creating drag. And finally, she landed in one of the thickest parts of the jungle, where all the trees and vines created a kind of natural safety net, cushioning that final brutal impact.
But surviving the fall? That was just the first impossible challenge. Now she had to survive the Amazon itself. And when she finally woke up, the reality of her situation was just grim. She comes to on Christmas morning, just covered in mud. Let's just run through the list of her injuries. A broken collarbone, a sprained knee, deep gashes all over her arms and legs, a severe concussion, and one of her eyes was swollen completely shut. On top of that, her glasses were gone, so she could barely see. She was utterly, terrifyingly alone.
But here's the thing. Juliane was not your ordinary 17-year-old. She was on that plane with her mom to meet her dad at Panguana, a research station they had built right in the heart of the Amazon. She'd spent years of her childhood living there. She wasn't a total stranger in some hostile land. In a strange way, she was home. She knew it was dangerous and what to do if things went wrong.
In that jungle knowledge, it kicked in immediately. She saw some mushrooms, but knew better than to eat them. Instead, her only food was a small bag of candies she found near the wreckage. And she knew this might be all she'd have for days, maybe even weeks, so she started rationing them from day one. With her injuries and almost no supplies, staying put was basically a death sentence. She knew she had to move, but where? Her entire survival would come down to one single piece of advice. This was it. This was her entire strategy, a lesson from her zoologist father. She found a tiny trickle of water bubbling up from the ground and just started following it. This simple rule, follow the water, became her everything for the next 11 days. It was her only map out of that green hell. Her journey was a grueling nightmare. On day 4, she found other crash victims, a horrifying sight that confirmed she was on the right path, but also terrified her about what happened to her mother. By day 9, a deep cut on her arm was infested with maggots. And by day 10, she was so weak she couldn't even walk anymore. She just started floating in the current, her hope almost totally gone.
And beyond the physical struggle, there was this intense psychological battle. In the first few days, she'd hear search planes overhead. She would scream and try to wave, but the jungle canopy was just too thick. They never saw her. And then,
the sound of the plane stopped. And in that silence, she understood a devastating truth. The world had probably given her up for dead. She was completely on her own. Just as she was about to give up entirely, after 10 days of struggling all by herself, the jungle finally offered a sign of hope. She saw it from the water, a small boat. At first, she was sure she was hallucinating from the hunger and exhaustion. She actually had to swim over and touch it just to believe it was real. From the boat, a tiny path led up the bank to a simple, empty hut used by local lumbermen. It was the first sign of another human being in 11 days.
Inside that hut, she found gasoline. And this is where her unique upbringing kicked in again. She remembered her dad using kerosene to treat their dog for maggots. So she siphoned some gasoline and poured it right into her open wound. The pain must have been excruciating as the maggots tried to burrow deeper. But she didn't. She pulled out about 30 of them, an act that almost certainly saved her from a fatal infection.
So she waited in the hut. Hours later, 3 men appeared, and they were terrified. I mean, this ghost of a girl with swollen eyes and ripped clothes, she looked like some kind of scary spirit from local legends. She had to gather all the strength she had left and say, in Spanish, "I am the girl from the Lanza crash. My name is Juliane." They couldn't believe it. They'd heard on the radio that everyone had died. Being found was the end of her ordeal, but it was really the beginning of a whole new chapter, one that would be defined by those 11 days she spent in the jungle.
And this is where the tragic difference becomes so clear. The other 14 people who survived the fall, they waited. And let's be honest, that's what most of us would do. But in the Amazon, waiting is a death sentence. Juliane, armed with her father's knowledge, acted. She didn't wait to be rescued, she walked towards her own rescue.
You know, she didn't just survive, she found her purpose. She went on to become a zoologist, just like her parents. She dedicated her entire career to the very rainforest that almost killed her, and she eventually became the director of Panguana, the exact research station she was trying to get to on that flight.
But survivor's guilt is a heavy, heavy burden. For years, she was tormented by nightmares and this profound, unanswerable question of why she lived when 91 other people, including her own mother, didn't. There's just no easy answer to a question like that.
In the end, I think she found her answer not in the why, but in the what now. This quote brings her entire story full circle. The jungle was both the cause of her trauma and the reason for her salvation. And by dedicating her life to protecting it, she transformed an unbelievable story of survival into a powerful legacy of purpose.